I'd like to bring this meeting of the school committee to order and ask you all to join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This first item on our agenda has been with us for a while. We've discussed it, we've gone to meetings, we've listened to experts, we've sent letters back and forth. And so I believe we're in a position to take some action on this Aubrey Street improvement article and transfer the property. So if committee members, if there's any other points to be made, this would be the time to do that.
Nicole and the principal.
Sorry?
No,
No, they're doing right here. Well, I don't see any hands for further discussion on this matter, where the floor is open for a motion.
well, the only
Yes,
thing,
Ms.
the only
Burgess?
thing is, I was questioning is, does it make a difference on the letter from North that we've gotten?
We received
How
a
does
letter
that
today
affect-
from Plymouth North School Council. Dr. Maestas?
Yes, this morning I received a letter from Plymouth North High School Council relative to the discussions that the school committee has been having and the questions that they posed to the Board of Selectmen, the town engineers, regarding the Aubrey Street corridor and the roundabouts, two roundabouts. And they had similar concerns, and they had discussed it in a couple of their meetings. I had been in conversation with Principal McSweeney regarding the concerns that they had. I forwarded the two letters that the school committee composed and sent to the Board of Selectmen, and they were very similar concerns to the school council. So the letter that you received today was acknowledgement that those concerns that the school committee had were similar to the ones that the school council had at North. And they wanted to thank the school committee for representing those concerns at the Board of Selectmen's meetings that we've had.
And I might add, the last paragraph in the letter, they raised the question, would we expect to anticipate any costs relative to the rotary on our property? And the engineers, as you know, went and observed the traffic flow and the bus progress and reported back to the Board of Selectmen and then to us that they didn't see any need for substantial improvements on the property.
That's correct.
Okay, no other information to come to the table. We can move to the second 2.2 on our agenda, which is the actual motion to transfer the property. Mr. Morgan.
I'd like to make a motion to transfer the care, custody, and control to the Board of Selectmen for municipal purposes for the school department property on OB Street, as referenced in the 2017 Special Town Meeting Article 2.
Thank you very much. You have a motion. Is there a second to that motion? I'll ask that question again. Is there a second to that motion? I will set the chair aside, and I'll second the motion. You keep it to the motion,
Okay.
to the vote
Is
occurs.
there any discussion on the motion on the floor on the transfer of property? Seeing none, let's go ahead and take a vote.
Oh, wait a minute, I gotta get it out of
I don't know if I'm going to be able to.
here. Lee, yours isn't?
We have,
There it is.
Lee, have you, all right, everybody has voted, and everybody has voted in favor. That's passed unanimously. And now, we are just a little ahead of schedule, but perhaps most of the people involved are here. Dr. Maestas, you want to start the budget presentation?
Yes, before we do that, Dr. Sorensen, I just want to give a very brief superintendent's update to you regarding a couple of items that are timely. The first item I'd like to bring to the school committee's attention is I was notified that one of our principals was just appointed to the MIAA Board of Directors, and that's Principal McSweeney, who is now going to be on the Board of Directors of the Massachusetts Athletic Association. So that's a great kudos to Kathleen, and we're very happy that she's able to represent the school district and other athletes throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, student athletes.
That's great news. Congratulations.
And the last one I have is something that we have worked through over the years regarding solar projects. As you
Regarding
know-
what? I'm sorry.
Regarding solar projects. As you know, we have undertaken quite a few solar initiatives in the school district, and we are going to continue with that realm and working on the Plymouth South High School solar project. We're going to add a regular agenda item just to keep everyone up to date on the solar project at Plymouth South High School, and there will be votes that are necessary along the way, so we may have some action items along the way, but I think it'll be a good opportunity for Mr. Costin and myself to give the school committee an update on progress on that project, and we are moving forward with that. So we're really excited to put that on as a regular agenda item. And
Great, thank you.
that's my report tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll do accounts payable at this point.
Okay, whereas the school committee members have been provided with a copy of the cost center transfer and transaction summary report and warrant for review, I move that the Plymouth School Committee accept and approve the reports and accounts payable warrant number S-120717 dated December 7th, 2017, in the amount of $980,698.06 as presented.
That's the motion. Is there a second? Mrs. Trisselli is the second. Is there any question? Okay, we'll call for the vote. We'll take the vote. And that has come up unanimous. Thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to declare a slight recess and wait for the Finance Committee to join us. They were scheduled to be, unless they're here. Is the Finance Committee here?
Not yet.
Yes or no?
No.
No. Then we're going to take a slight recess for 7 minutes, because they were told we would start this budget presentation at 7 o'clock, so we'll stand in recess for 7 minutes. And I was told during the break that the Finance Committee had a meeting that began at 6 o'clock, and they weren't sure when that meeting would end, so we're going to start, and I hope they join us as soon as they can. Dr. Maestas.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight is our annual proposed budget meeting to discuss the budget that we've presented we prepared to present tonight. We have a number of slides to present to kind of go over exactly where our budget is, and the information that we are going to share tonight is an electronic school board, and I will be using the PowerPoint to actually walk through all these slides. So I'm going to stand and do that. Mr. Costin will help out later on into the presentation with the cost center detail that he can kind of walk the committee through some of the object code information that you have within your budget. So we'll go ahead and get started. Before we begin, I'd like to thank everyone, our cost center managers who are here tonight. They've done a great job for preparing all this information for you tonight. Gary Costin's office has done a phenomenal job, and Laura Vickery, who is Gary's assistant, has really worked diligently to try to put our budget into a format where it's easily manipulated through PDF documents, so you can actually move around the documents a lot easier. So just want to thank them for going through and helping us to make this process a little bit easier. So as we begin to look at the budget, there are some core methodologies that we run through every year, and this is very similar that we've done every year. You'll notice that this is my 10th budget. So this is the 10th time we actually build a budget and present it in this fashion. We've done things a little bit differently over the years. We've changed. There'll be some changes within state regulation and state coding that Mr. Costin will talk about a little bit later. But pretty much this is the process that we've gone through this year. We met with the town manager, selectmen, advisory and finance, school committee chair, school committee, and Gary Costin and myself. We met at town hall in September, and we had the opportunity to really take a look at exactly what the idea would be for preparing a budget moving forward. And The whole idea was trying to keep our programs intact, and the whole idea was to take a look at the same level of service. What we did is we met with our people, our cost center managers, and we really informed them that our goal this year was to not insert anything that was new into the budget. So our budgets that you'll see tonight, that are going to be presented tonight, are very, very lean budgets. They are really following the guideline of the same level of service. There are a number of items that were presented through our budget process that principals would like us to consider moving forward. Although we do understand that there are some financial difficulties that we're going through in the town of Plymouth. We have the sewer issue that's looming out there and how to repair that and who's going to pay for it. We just opened Plymouth South High School. I think we're very, very concerned about expenditures on the school department side. So what we did is we were very, very strict on sticking to the cost center direction of same level of service. So we did do that. So this budget does represent same level of service. Every principal, coordinator, director in the room here tonight would probably give you a list of things that they would like to add to their programs. Those are things that we would consider in the future. Some of the items that people may request are within capital. But again, those are things that we'll have to manage as time goes on. This budget is same level of service. And I did list a couple of key areas moving forward at the end of this PowerPoint that will actually give you an idea what some of those areas are for you to just think about. So let's take a look at the historical perspective of budget increases from year to year to year. Now this is the budget amount increase from one year to the next. And this slide goes back to 2010. Our base year was 2009. That was the first year that my administration actually started working together building budgets. So this is the historical perspective of the time that I've been superintendent. So you can see when we started back in 2010, we were at $1.4 million below prior year in that budget cycle. If you follow that trajectory over time, you'll notice 2010 to 2012, that's when we had the toughest economic time in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, actually around the country. And you can see that we had a few years in this cycle that really demonstrated some budget difficulties for the district. But keep in mind, during that period of time, we did get stimulus grants that actually helped us to not lay people off. So although we did have a dip in that same level of service dollar amount, we actually kept people employed. So we did keep staffing levels the same. Follow this trajectory over time. 2012, we were 2.2 million above prior year. We move all the way forward to 2017, which is this area right here. And you'll notice in 2017, we had a $5.9 million increase from prior year. And if you remember, that's when we added full day K. So we had a spike that year, and that was to be able to compensate for full day K. But you will notice in a slide that follows, we did get on the following year, after those students were actually in the seats, we actually got additional Chapter 70 dollars. So it did help to bring that budget down a little bit. So in 2018, we were $4.1 million above prior year. That was last year. And moving forward for next year, same level of service. It's $3.2 million is what it'll cost the town of Plymouth to be able to operate the schools with the same level of service. Keep in mind, there are two key features in our budget that will really drive that same level of service. One, it's contracts. We have contracts throughout the district, bus contracts, special education contracts, and the next biggest piece is going to be our salaries and anticipated cost of living increases. All right, so those are our two big features. This slide demonstrates percentage above prior year. So this slide demonstrates back to FY 2008. We were 4.9%. We got to FY 09 when I started, we were 5.2%. And then in FY 2009, we had 9 C cuts from the state, and you can see that we went into deficit as far as what we were receiving for funds. And you can see the 3 years that we had difficulty, but you can see the trending over time from 2012 to 2019, 3.1, 3.1, 2.3, 2.0. And then you'll notice full day K, we're up at 5.8. And this year, our budget increase from last year to this year, percentage-wise, is 3.4%. Okay, so that's the number we're talking about, and that's the budget in its entirety. So we take a look at where our dollars are going, and this pie chart demonstrates exactly where the dollars go. Our total budget is $97.4 million, and that is without insurance and other obligations, and I will show that on the next slide. But our most expensive area within our budget is $62 million. That's certificated salaries. That's everyone in the district that has a license. School psychologists to teachers, assistant principals, principals, superintendents, everything that can, if you have a license, that's where that dollar amount is, and we're at $62 million. That's 64% of the entire school department budget. The next one is clerical salaries. That's 2% of the budget. That's anyone that's in a clerical role in the district. That's 2% of the entire budget. Other salaries, that's skilled craftsmen, custodians, the areas that don't fit in the prior two categories. It's 12% of the budget, $11.775 million. And contracted services, $17 million. So contracted services, once again, is our school bus contract, special education contract, copier contracts, anything that has a contract within the Plymouth Public Schools is in that line item. It's 18% of the total budget. It's $17.2 million. We have supplies and materials for the Plymouth Public Schools, all schools, all levels, $2.7 million, which is 3% of the budget. And then we have other expenses, which is professional development and things of that nature. It's at 1% of the budget. So this comprises all the different areas within our budget, and this identifies exactly what those costs are per those areas. The next slide is a significant slide that demonstrates our total budget, and this is including insurance. And what I'm going to cover in this particular slide are the last three pieces to the pie chart. You'll notice these three. The first one is active health care for active employees. Anyone that's in the district that is working in the district that actually takes health care, the town's contribution to be able to meet that obligation is $13.8 million, so close to $14 million for those obligations. Retiree health care benefits. Anyone that is retired in the Plymouth Public Schools, they have a health care contribution. It's $9.1 million. And we have workman's comp, disability, and life insurance. Those are all options that we manage, and these are actual costs for the district, and that's $728,000. So when you take a look at those last three pieces to the budget, that's where those increases come from the prior slide. And those are all benefits connected to employees. So let's take a look at where the increases are in those categories. So this slide demonstrates exactly where the increases are. Take a look at certificated salaries based on anticipated contract obligations. We have a $2.3 million increase in certificated salaries. Clerical salaries, $7,900. Other salaries, $143,000. So you can actually see those are what the same level of service with anticipated contractual allowances looks like for next year. Those are also column and lane changes. Those are embedded into that line item, those line items. Next one is contracted services. Talked about contracted services before. This is our increases to our bus contract, increases to special education placements that have contracts. So this is a driving factor in our budget. It's up by $634,000. So these are things that are really untouchable, beyond our control, and a lot of them are tied to mandates. The next piece is supplies and materials. Supplies and materials across the district, that is up by $35,000, and other expenses up by $75,000. So you can see our two largest line areas in this particular slide are certificated salaries and contracted services. All right? Let's take a look at accounts with significant change. So you'll notice in our budget when we present it, you'll notice there are some changes that will stick out more than others, okay? The first one is electricity and solar. Our electricity and solar line item for next year is going up $43,857. Keep in mind we don't have our new solar array and plan at South High School up and running yet. South High School has a a significant increase to electricity on the campus. And also, we've experienced a small level of degradation on our solar panels, so you have a little bit less generation on solar. Take those two into consideration, and we're about $43,000, almost $44,000 up on electricity. Regular transportation, this is the increase to our transportation contract from year 1 to year 2. So we're up by $139,000. SPED transportation is down. That is a good spot for us in the sense that we have fewer students that are actually attending private placements that actually require transportation. So this is actually allowing us to see a decrease in that area. SPED tuitions is, we're anticipating an increase of $510,000. That is a significant jump. As you know, we have students that go to private placements out of district. Private placements do have significant and sharp tuition increases. One thing that we also have a little bit of difficulty with is the collaboratives set their tuition rates a little bit later and well off into our budget building process. So that's one risk that we do take. But for now, we are expecting for next year about $510,000 in increases to our SPED tuitions. And that is embedded into the budget as we will present. So let's take a look at Chapter 70. Chapter 70 is state aid, and this comes right directly from state tax. And this is the state's contribution to the school department. And this is what we've been able to get from one year to the next. This is an addition or decrease from one year to the next. So if we go back to 2007, we were 1.7 million. 2008, we dropped to about 700,000 to a little over $1 million. 2009, we went back up. 2010 is exactly the year that we had 9 seat cuts, and we had a significant drop in Chapter 70. And that's when we did all that work with stimulus grants to help try to offset some of those losses. But you can see Chapter 70 increases from year to year have not really increased a lot. 2014, we saw a spike. It went up almost 600,000, a little bit more than a little less than 600,000. And then you move on over to 2018, the current year. This is the year, this current year is the year that we started realizing the increase in dollars to our full-day K students in kindergarten. So that's why we see such a large increase. That's $1.5 million. That's above 2017. 2017, we were 442,000. 2018, we were 1.5 million. And that trajectory, we see that will continue because those kids are in seats now. Okay, so that full-day K plan that we put together a couple of years ago has actually worked out for us, and we did a little bit better than what we actually presented to school committee 2 years ago. So we're really pleased with that. Full-day K seems to be working well, but you'll notice, you can see the trend over time. The increases are not dramatic at all, okay? So this is something that's somewhat of a troubling slide because of the cost. These are obligations that we have, these are mandates that we have, and you can see the differences from year to year to year. The bottom bar demonstrates the current proposed budget that we have. We have about $3.9 million in local funds, and we're anticipating we'll get about $1.96 million in circuit breaker. What I want to demonstrate to you is our circuit breaker funding hasn't gone up from year to year. Although you'll take a look at our obligation has increased at a much greater level. So that's something that we find needs a level of advocacy because circuit breaker funds really help us to offset some of those extraordinary special education costs. So that is somewhat of a dilemma for us, all right? So let's take a look at our energy with our solar farms. And this slide is demonstrated in kilowatt hours. To the left, you'll notice that this is what we generate about 12 million kilowatt hours, close to 12 million in FY12. And you'll notice that looking into Plymouth South High School and the new field will generate about 3.3 million kilowatt hours in the new project. But you can see how much energy we are producing with these projects all together. So we are well on our way to a great model. The thing that I like to highlight is that what we generate, anything that's in excess actually goes to the town of Plymouth. So if you look in 2017, we've actually been able to offload about 2.5 million kilowatt hours in energy to the town of Plymouth. FY18, about $2.1 million in energy, and 2019, we will offload about 3.3 million kilowatt hours to the town of Plymouth, because we are actually going to be having our solar project online. Anytime we generate more electricity, the town benefits, because we can actually give them electricity at a cheaper rate than they buy it now. So this demonstrates right now the amount of energy that we can actually offload to the town of Plymouth, which actually helps the overall budget to the town. One thing that's great for us is it allows us to be able to predict our solar costs from year to year to year. Like I mentioned earlier tonight, we're going to be providing more and more information to the school committee regarding our development. There's a lot of work that's gone behind the scenes, and we anticipate we'll have more information as the days go forward. So let's take a look at the amount of grants that we receive in the district. This is a slide that we haven't showed in the past, I haven't demonstrated to you in the past, but this demonstrates all the different grant opportunities that we have in the district, all the way from Parent Power, which is in our Early Childhood Center, all the way to SPED allocations, which is IDEA, which is a grant that we get for special education. Our special education grant over time, you'll notice this is our largest grant that we'll receive. The problem that we have with the special education grant is, as time goes on, it really doesn't match the cost of living, and that allocation has really stayed pretty much flat. And that's one thing that we need a level of support in. We really believe that some additional funds in this area would really help us to really maintain some of our programs. We actually assign teachers to IDEA special education allowances that we do receive. What happens is a lot of staff are embedded into that grant. It doesn't account for their cost of living increases that are part of the contractual agreements that we have. So it's really difficult. We have to compensate for that somehow. Another thing that is somewhat of a concern for us is, I'll give you one example. Right here is Title IIA, which is improving teacher quality, which is a grant that Dr. Campbell runs out of his office. That is over $200,000 grant that we receive every year. There's strong indication that that grant's going to go away, and it is what we use for professional development. So there are some areas within the budget that we don't find out about grants until August, onto actually what our allocation is going to be. So it's very vulnerable for us. But if that happens, there's going to have to be some adjustments that are made. We won't find out until August. So that's an area that we need to keep an eye on. These are our allocations over time, and this kind of compounds the point I made earlier about where our grants have gone up or where they haven't. If you take a look at 2014, you can see we had $1.8 million in our special education grant, and we're at 1.9, so we've gone up about $100,000 in 5 years going forward to next year. And that really hasn't matched the cost of special education. So that is one area that we would like to take a look at. Our Title I allocations have gone from $600,000 to $1 million. Keep in mind, back when I was assistant superintendent, we had about $1.2, $1.3 million in Title I. And then we went to a significant drop in Title I, and then it's not quite rebounding. We need a lot of support with Title I. We're at about $1 million that we bring in for the district. And the other one is Title IIA. I mentioned it before, and you can see the allocation back in 2014 was $251,000, and for this year's budget, if we do receive it, it would be about $216,000. And that number has been stable for a number of years. All right, so it's not stable, but we've actually had the grant for a number of years. All right, so I want to turn it over to Mr. Costin. He's going to actually walk through the cost center lines for you, and we can go from there. I'll come back to you in a little bit and explain some of the increases that didn't make the budget, and some items that the staff would like to highlight. So, Gary, if you want.
Thank you, Dr. Mastis. The next section, which we call the financial summary, is really actually 5.2 on the agenda, but we've incorporated into the PowerPoint. Just a few comments, first of all. The financial summary, this is what goes into our budget book that's handed out to the public, to the town meeting members. There's a traditional format that we use year from year, but as you can imagine, with a $97 million budget, we have to have some type of coding and some type of assignments and classifications. But to be honest with you, we didn't create all of this ourselves in most cases. And I would refer to you to section 5.1 of the agenda, but the chart of accounts, which I hand out every year, how we classify all of our expenditures, who's responsible for those expenditures. But this year's a little bit different. And I just want to make a few comments about that, if I may. The chart of accounts, obviously, we update for all of our new cost center managers because they're now responsible for them, so there's some identity behind who's responsible for what. The grants are updated, any new grants are added with fund codes. And the biggest part of it is that we have really 6 account codes that we have to use, which is professional salaries, the number 2, which is the clerical salaries, the other salaries, the code 350, we call 50,003. Then we go into expenses, which is contracted services. We go into other expenses and supplies. Those are things that we don't really determine what goes where. We don't have a lot of flexibility. That's really set up to us by the DESE. Now, this year, my staff and I attended a meeting with Department of Education. And as you know, the school, DESE sends out school profiles. This year, they have really changed that, and they've started to link all of our accounting codes with EPIMS, which I know Karen Vanette handles all of the EPIMS assignments. We're constantly checking where staff are assigned so that they link with the EPIMS. The bottom line is you're going to see this year, DESE, and we've seen prototypes of it, it'll be generating per school expenditures, along with MCAS scores, et cetera. So when we do instructional expenditures, we do the end of the year report that we all speak about and the school committee chair signs off on, and which is audited every year. Those expenditures, it starts with our budget, what we plan to expend on instruction and all of the other accounts, and it's wrapped up at the end of the year with the end of the year report. And now all of those are linked into salaries, the EPIMS, highly qualified substitutes there. So there's been a lot of changes with that, which I just will make a few more comments about. So I think that's important to know that is something that's coming down the pike. We'll look for it. But these budgets are just not spending plans. They're being evaluated now on what we've actually expended, especially in the instructional areas, which are what we call the 2000 DESE function codes, instruction, what we're spending directly on students. So I think that's important to make that. Now, as part of that, you will see that we did make some changes in the FY18 budget. So when you're going through, and I'll give you a good example, in Cost Center 352, which Julia Colby oversees, technology, you will see, if you look in 2017, you'll see an expenditure of, in some cases, of nothing, or a smaller expenditure. But in 18, there'll be a large increase, budgeted, revised budget. In 19, it will be retained there. The reason is that the DESE codes required us to take those staff that we call district-wide and assign them to a school. And you can follow the logic here. Why are they assigned to the school? Because they're now going to be linked to the EPIMS number and to the funds that were spent on that school, which are now linked to the MCAS scores. So all of this is really kind of a process and that DESE has been working, the Finance Bureau, for a number of years. So I just want to make you aware of that. So with that, if we just want to go through in general, if I can have, number 15, I'm sorry, the pie chart. Beautiful. So, again, I know Dr. Maestas covers a lot of this, but this is really what will be in our budget book, which will be presented. Again, you can just see we're salary-driven, we're staff-driven, we're service-driven. 80/20, 79/21, that is really very, very consistent. So this obviously shows you the chart, the increases between, as I said, salaries and non-salaries. Then if we go to the next slide, which is 16, you'll see again, oh, my eyes are getting older, but the cost centers. You can see all the cost centers in color. Yellow is the elementary, the green is the middle schools, and I believe that's, and I apologize, I am colorblind. The purple is, it's the secondary schools, and then we go into district-wide. So, again, under the heading of everybody that's presenting tonight, it'll be very consistent. It's going to be those contracted services, salaries, all of those object codes. If we could go to the next slide, please. Again, you'll see the summary of those object codes, as I was talking about, 1s, 2s, 3s, 4, 5s, and 6s. This is consistent across the state of Massachusetts. Those are the numbers that we all have to use the object codes. And you can see what the expended revised budget, and again, the revised budget reflects those things that we had to change based on current staffing, updates and hires, and changes in the DESE codes. Number 18. Thank you. So again, within each cost center, this is what the cost center managers will be speaking to tonight. Again, those contracted, those object codes, that's how it's all broken out, from cost center to object codes. And this goes through consistently, and we do give even more. Once the budget's finalized, we give more detailed reports that are within our budget book. And this would be, let me just get to it so I can read it, I apologize. Oh, if I can see it. This would be the two types of reports that are being offered. God. Just bear with me 1 second, okay. This is how you're able to navigate tonight through your, through the budget presentation. So number 19 is the cost center 352, which is the detail report. We've changed that report a little bit this year. We've put, and we heard from a number of people, and especially the committee, we put percentage increases on each organ object. Okay, so you'll see an organ object, you'll see detail below it. This is the one, I think, if I were going to have two reports running, I would have this one running in the front, because this is really what the cost center managers will be speaking to. So again, you know, the way it works, you click down, you highlight the cost center, and you click on it, it'll bring you right to that cost center. And in the bottom right-hand side of the page, when you're at that cost center, it'll bring you back to the main menu. And the second, number 20 here, the second report, which is report number 333, this really rolls all the departments, which would be something like language art, visual performing arts, music, those type of things. It will roll all of the salaries and the expenses into that one area and total it and kind of give you an overview. But again, my suggestion would probably be use the first report, the detail report, and that's what the cost center managers would be speaking to, and you'd be able to see what specific in the text lines that they're requesting.
So I mentioned during my part of the presentation that there are a number of items that we did not include in the budget. And for tonight's purposes, I thought it was important for you to have an idea on what we are planning for the future and things that will be hitting the budget in the future. One, I think some of you may know that we've had an increase in English learners in the district. Keep in mind that ELL English language learners is now changed by the state, and now we are identifying our students that were formerly ELLs, now they're ELs. And it's English learners. We do see the need for additional support for our students that are not native English speakers. We also see the increase to elementary health education, and we have discussed this in the past, and we are looking at an overhaul of that program for the future, and that's something that we are working on. Another item that I believe is on the radar, it has been on for some time. I think we've done a number of upgrades to our network, and we've done some spot improvements throughout the district, but one of the things that we are very interested in and will consider in the future is what we do to either focus on a one-to-one or bring your own device model for the Plymouth Public Schools, which is something that I would really like to include into a future budget. That would be something that we would propose to the school committee, and that is something that we see in the future. But that would include staff and equipment, and also presenting what that model would look like and how we can support it as a district. Keep in mind that we are a very intensive internet-based operation and network operation, and we run our entire district with a handful of people. They do a wonderful job, but if we increase the capability of our network and increase the availability of internet access to students and their devices, we need to take a look at how we're going to grow and scale up upon that. The other piece, which is somewhat, that comes up from time to time, as you have seen over the last 7-8 years, are, building maintenance needs, and we do follow our capital outlay process. I do anticipate in the future that there may be items that may have to be included into the budget, or in the form of town meeting support to be able to keep our buildings in shape. And I think that's one thing that we've been very fortunate to have the support of capital outlay. But I do believe that keeping our buildings in excellent condition is a significant goal. And I know Arthur has been able to really work within the capital outlay process, but capital outlay is a significant competition, and we don't always address all the needs that we put on that list. In the future, that might be a requirement or something that we add into the budget. And the last piece, which I think you've all heard over time, is mental health support. And some of our principals tonight will talk about improvements that we've been able to engage in the district regarding mental health and the support of that. But we are experiencing somewhat of a crisis in the district, and this is not necessarily Plymouth. I was at the Superintendent's Lighthouse Group last week, and around the table, every superintendent listed what are your concerns when you build your budget this year. The number one issue of all the superintendents around the table was mental health in their schools and how they can support the issues that are happening in and around the region and around the Commonwealth, but around the country. It does seem to be at an epic crisis for a number of areas. So we do see that as a significant piece. So moving on to the budget presentation for tonight, we would like to, I just want to highlight another piece just for our audience and for the school committee, the public hearing on this budget. And I will put that slide up at the close of our presentation tonight. The public hearing will be December 18th, 2017 at 7 p.m. For some reason, on my presentation, I wrote 2016, but keep in mind it's 2017. And it will be here, and that will be the first item on the agenda. So with that said, we'd like to begin our budget presentation for this evening, and we'd like to start off this year with our district-wide facilities, and that will bring up Mr. Arthur Montron. He is here tonight to present the district-wide facilities budget, and that is budget 359.
Some questions.
Good evening.
Mr. Montron, before you start, please, Mr. Bagley.
Just some questions.
Sure.
So the slide, current and future needs, can you give us some idea of cost?
You know, Mr. Begley, I don't have the cost for these. I think these are items that were identified as a need in the future. They were not quantified in programs, you know, that need this support. We really haven't identified the quantity of people. We really need to flush out more information on our health model. But at this point, there is not a dollar amount that is supported with each one of these items tonight.
Not even ballpark, like on technology, just so that we know whether or not, oh, this is a $2 million price tag, but this could be a $20 million price tag. I mean,
Well, one of the things that we're trying to do, and I'll just use technology because that's probably the one that I'm most familiar with. One of the things that we see that it's a growing need is to add more staff to Mr. McLean's staff. You know, we're looking at a couple more staff members in that area, and these are a little bit more sophisticated in engineering aspects of the job. We're also looking at increasing more access points across the district. So our elementaries have limited access. We want to increase that. You know, so it's one of the things that we need to do and do a site survey to actually plot out exactly where these access points need to be, the kind of bandwidth we need to increase that. And then we would have to go out and bargain through a vendor to actually see what the cost would be to be able to supply that new bandwidth. So it's something that we really need to take a look at to be able to support our future. In addition, English language learners, if we look at increasing that, we're looking at 1 FTE, which is a cost. We look at that as an increase, and we're also looking at 1.0 elementary health teacher, which is 1 additional staff member. And they're approximately, for those 2 positions, about $90,000, so about $45,000 each. Technology support, I would say that they're probably around the same staff dollar amount to add a couple more staff there, Mr. Begley. But those are numbers that are estimates for the 4 identified staff people that we did mention between English learners, health, and technology. So you're talking right there, probably $180,000.
which would be on the low side compared to when you're saying building maintenance needs,
Yes.
just give us an idea of what that is. So it's something that's too small for capital outlay, but it's something that obviously has to get done, so.
Yeah, I would say that it would be roofs that need to be replaced in the district.
Oh, big.
And we'd have to pull through and look through our building audits to actually set the priority on what would need to be done. So that would be something that we can do in preparation.
So, but roofs would be under capital outlay.
They would be, but we'd have to, sometimes capital outlay doesn't cover the extent of what is available. So
So the studies and stuff would be.
absolutely. And the last time, and Mr. Montran can probably talk about roofs in the district and what they've cost. They're a little bit outside the scope of what capital is allowing us to spend.
So just the clarification there, the building maintenance needs is the cost of identifying what's needed, the concerns, so that we can make a case for the capital
Absolutely.
outlay.
Eric Costa.
Mr. Costa.
And just, and I know Mr. Montron will speak to this, is that when we prepared our budget, we prepared a level service budget, and that knowing what we know today. But we're finding there are a lot of, I want to say, smaller projects that don't fall into capital outlay as the buildings age, that we're not, we're having have to plan more for, that we can't do through capital outlay. And yet, under a level services budget, we're keeping, it's hard to keep a level service of repairs and maintenance when it's really actually growing, but yet not enough to be under capital outlay. So if that, hopefully that answers that question.
Okay, that makes this slide more meaningful. Thank you.
You okay?
Yep, thank
Any
you.
other committee members with questions before we begin? I want to welcome the Finance Subcommittee, and we're just about to begin presentation of cost centers. Dr. Maestas?
Yes, at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Montron. He is actually here tonight to present Cost Center 359, which is district-wide facility services. So, Mr. Montron.
Thank you, Doctor. Good evening. This budget represents, as has been said many times already tonight, a level service. It's an overall increase in the budget of approximately $36,500, or 1.7%. That's increase is really due to licensing fees, contracted services, and cleaning supplies. Those are where the big issues are. To speak to Mr. Bagley's question of maintenance, if you were to go to page 166, the second item, we've already been planning for this, and we do set aside approximately $60,000 for unanticipated extraordinary maintenance. Those are things that come up throughout the school year that weren't planned on.
Right.
And that's been how we've started to handle it since maybe 2 years ago. But other than that, it's a very level service budget, and we are fortunate that we do fairly well with capital outlay to take care of other needs in the district, larger needs in the district. But if you have any other questions or specific questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Questions to Mr. Montron? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And next, we're moving to the elementary principals. So the elementary principals can come up, and we will start with Cost Center 305, and that'll be Cold Spring Elementary. Principal Morgan will actually begin the presentation for the elementary principals.
While they're coming to the table, how do you, after you've been on the page, how do you get back to the beginning again?
There's a little red box at the
Little red
bottom.
box at the bottom of each
Says return
page.
to the table.
What?
That one might not show up
Not on the
Oh, yeah, way
iPads.
down in the,
It doesn't work.
The iPads don't do it.
it's way down in the right-hand corner.
Lost of technology.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, thank you.
It didn't, Dr. Sorensen,
So you gotta run with it.
On the iPad.
it doesn't work on the iPads. That's why I brought my,
I figured that out.
yeah.
Thank you.
I just was letting you know.
Dr. Maestas, back to you.
Yes, so we are moving to the elementary cost centers. We'll start with Cost Center 305, Cold Spring Elementary, and Principal Chris Morgan.
It should go pretty straight down once you get it.
Should be.
Chris Morgan from Cold Spring Elementary School. To give you a little bit of information about our school.
Hold on one second, Chris.
Not on.
Just want to, is that, just take a look, is the digital display on? Does it say?
Now, there's, well, I see numbers, but I don't see them. Something
Okay,
happened.
hold on one second. Here it comes, Evan.
Here comes support.
No, it's on, you can hear it.
Batteries, the budget.
You can hear her, but I don't know if that.
1, 2.
Maybe it's just the operator. So, I don't use a mic at Cold Spring. We don't need to. We have a population of 257 students, so I usually don't use the mic. So, we have 13 classrooms at our school, 2 at every grade level, with the exception of grade 5. We have 3. We have 43 team members, staff members at our school, and 26 hold certification in their field, with adjustment counselor that we share with Hedge Elementary School and a full-time school psychologist. So Cold Spring is a whole school Title I school, which means that all students are eligible to receive Title I services throughout the day, and we have a before-school and an after-school tutoring session. Our special education department, we have 13% of our students receive services through special education. And as Dr. Maestas says, our EL population is growing. So we have 27 students who are currently in the program in various stages of services. And currently our free and reduced population is 49%. So just a little bit of information from over the summer. We were very fortunate to have some beautiful new tiles put into our classroom floors, which were much needed. It really changes the look of the classrooms, and beautiful drop ceilings so in the hallway. So really changed the look of our school, and it looks very, very nice. Next year's projection for enrollment is 238. So my budget, as has been said before, is the same level of service, but the projection population is 238. So if you look at if you're looking at a report, it's report 352. We're at the very beginning of that report. You'll notice that everything is pretty much the same. All our academic lines reflect that 238 per pupil cost. And any differentiation that you see in the percentage was on pages like 6 and 7, where I reallocated some funds from one line to another to cover services to make sure that we meet the needs of those departments. So other than that, it is really the same. No big changes, and same level of services. Any questions?
Go ahead, moving on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, Trina Camaro, principal of Federal Furnace Elementary, cost center 306. We are currently serving 388 students in grades K through 5. We have 20 classrooms, and many support professionals, paraprofessionals, and staff members who make our school a fabulous place. Of note, our building this year, there's just 2 things. One is our Title I program. Like Cold Spring and Hedge, Federal Furnace has become a school-wide Title I program because 40% or more of our families do qualify or meet the criteria for being low income. So that is new to our building. We used to be a targeted assistance, so our percentage of families qualifying has increased. So like Principal Morgan said, our whole school, any student can benefit. You don't see those numbers in the budget, but to quantify that, there is an additional about 4 part-time staff members that our building benefits from who are not in our budget. The second piece of our building that's of note is the program for children on the autism spectrum that you've heard me speak about many times in the past. But of note is we are gradually phasing that program out, as you're aware of our building, not of the district, but of the in the building. So you will see in the budget, and I will point it out specifically, some numbers that are decreasing because of that. So we do have students in the autism program in our building in grades 1 through 5. This year we did not take in any kindergartners. Next year we will not take any kindergartners as well, so then we will have students in grades 2 through 5. So you see how we're gradually phasing it out. And so in your report, the 352 report, it is Department 26. It's, I believe, page 13 and 14 for you. And you'll see that some of the supply lines are down by about 30, 33, 34%. That's because those funds have been transferred to other buildings where the program will be. The staffing has not been adjusted for next year. We're still waiting on enrollment to determine exactly how that staffing will be adjusted, and that will be transferring, if at all, from building to building. So it won't be an overall increase to the district. So, as we have in the past, we greatly benefit from PTA fundraisers. Specifically, our PTA is starting to raise funds for a playground project, so we're hoping to have one of those in the future, but again, funds that you won't see in the budget because those will be raised by our Parent-Teacher Association. And other funds you will not see in the budget that we get elsewhere are through our partnership agencies for providing mental health services to students in the schools. So other than that, the nitty-gritty, if you look at the budget, similar to what Principal Morgan said, there's just a little bit of reallocation. In Department 8 on page 10, you'll see one line for mathematics has a 73% decrease, where another one has a 250% increase, and that's because it just swapped. So if you added those 2 lines together and compared it to the previous year, it would be virtually the same. Then in Department 21, the General Education Supplies and Materials Contractual Services, which is an 04. You learned earlier about your codes. We are in need of another copier, so that's a service fee, so that's a small increase projected there. And the only other piece would be that Department 26 that I mentioned already for the program for children on the autism spectrum. Overall, most of our percentages are down. It's about a 1% increase overall to the budget. Can I answer any questions?
Questions? Okay, next.
Hi, Kristen Wilson, Principal of Hedge Elementary School, Cost Center 307. As Principal Morgan and Principal Camaro said, we are a school-wide Title I school, which gives us a lot of support with the Title I grant in regards to additional support for our building. I was here about a month ago for my school improvement plan presentation, so some of the information might seem redundant. But as I described back then, Hedge has experienced a very unexpected decline in enrollment. This year, we lost 48 students over from June through present time, but we've only taken in 16 new students, so it's a decrease of about 32 students. So presently, we have 146 students in our 11 classrooms at Hedge Elementary School. We have 45 employees that are both full-time and part-time. Out of those employees, 7 of them are funded through Title I grant, and part of those positions are to support our social and emotional needs in the building. So we have a half-time adjustment counselor that we share with Principal Morgan, as well as a full-time registered behavior technician to help support some of our kids throughout the week. We have 19% of our students, English is their second language, and 17% of our students are receiving special education services. Thinking about additional funds that are not in our budget or were in our budget last year, we were grateful to receive a capital improvement project last year, and we were able to install a brand new field. That used to be a dirt lot, so that's been very well appreciated by our community. We also anticipate some building repairs coming up in the next couple of years. We are a 107-year-old building, so to maintain the building, there are some things that need to happen. It's in really good shape considering the age of the building. It's a solid structure, but we do have some paint and gutters that need to be repaired that we've put in for capital improvement, as well as our cupola, which has what we believe could be the original slate tiles that surround the cupola, and we don't have the equipment in the town to repair that, so we've put in for improvement grants for that as well. Some of our after-school programs are funded through Title I, but we also receive a great grant from the Verk Enterprises, and the Zion Lutheran Church has provided support for us for materials for those programs. To support our students' basic needs, we receive funds from the Rizzo Foundation, the Lions Club, and South Shore Community Action Council, and to also host family events and social events for our children. The PTA has been generous in their support, as well as some Title I funds to support some parent engagement activities. The Museum of Science in Boston helps fund our overnight trip to the Museum of Science for our 4th graders, and we've been fortunate to receive that every year. Another piece that we're looking with our building is the pavement around our building is going to need some adjustments over the years, so we'll be looking for that in the future as well. And I think that's about it. When you go through our budget, you'll see that because of our enrollment decrease, that our line items for supplies and materials have been adjusted to account for that decrease in enrollment. Are there any questions?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Are there any specific reasons for the decline in enrollment?
There are a variety of reasons. They're all very unique to each individual family. There is some hypotheses that the rental income, the rents are a little higher in North Plymouth right now, and some of our families are not able to afford those rents. But we also have a lot of families that purchased homes, and there's not a lot of available housing to purchase in the North Plymouth area, so they've gone to surrounding towns or other schools within the district.
Can I just,
We've got a few.
Dr. Sorensen, can I add to that just a little bit?
Go ahead.
That's a good question, Mr. Stevenson. I think one of the things that we realized at Hedge is we had a 2 or 3 year bump and increase in enrollment. So we've actually seen an increase, and it's gone back down. So it's actually for about 2 years that we've seen, almost 3 years that we've seen an increase. So the building will actually go back to the enrollment that it was 3 years ago, which is something that we saw coming. The kindergarten at Hedge Elementary School actually goes to West Elementary now. And that was a short-term adjustment because of that short-term increase. Those students will come back, we're anticipating next year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. Indian Brook Elementary School, it is budget 308. Unlike my three predecessors and one after, we are a non-Title I school. So some of the services that my colleagues just presented, we do not have those within our building. Indian Brook is about 585 students right now. Budget was built for 580 next year. We've really hovered right around 600 pretty consistently the last several years. We have 25 classrooms, K-5. One of the mentioned is the ASD program. It is transitioning to Indian Brook Elementary School. So currently we have students in grades kindergarten and first. For 2019, then it'll go K 1, 2, and so forth. And by 2022, we will be K-5 for ASD, splitting the program with South Elementary School. Overall, our budget really has not changed much. I am looking it over, kind of laugh at some because you see that percent change, for example, of 150% on a light item, but it translates to about $600. It's not large amounts. Some of them is, for example, to purchase a new testing kit for the speech and language teacher, and that's on line page 30, excuse me. But there are really very few changes related to the budget. It reflects the population currently built around ELA, math, and so forth, that our coordinators provide us those amounts, and then everything else is pretty much based upon what we currently have at level funding. A couple of things I'd like to highlight, for example, is I know Mr. Montron was talking about the building and grounds. One of the things I do want to mention is, too, we have a great support, and I know many of the buildings do, from their custodial staff, because they do a lot just beyond the cleaning of a building, painting. They were out there with us this year, redoing the field, playground, and so forth. So there's a lot of maintenance that goes on above and beyond that traditional stuff that does not reflect in capital outlay and so forth. And I know I had the opportunity to give a tour to school committee last year, and we kind of highlighted some of those things that have occurred. Also, not reflected in the budget, which I know was mentioned about PTA, but the PTA, I mean, the amount of money they spend to support the schools, and it's not just, again, the fields and the playground, but, for example, the Indian Brook PTA allocates about $11,000 a year for field trips. And, you know, that's the only way it's possible to give those kids exposure to those kinds of events that, you know, connect to the curriculum. So those are a lot of the items of which aren't reflected in the budget, but are really instrumental in making a school successful for the students. So anyway. But overall, as I said, very little change related to the budget. It's basically moving monies from one line to the next in order to provide certain supports that might reflect small changes. So, question?
Okay, moving on.
Thank you. Pat Frayne from Manamet Elementary School, cost center 309. So the budget for Manamet Elementary represents services for 302 students projected for next year. The total number of sections of 15 rooms with about 46 staff members currently certificated and non-certificated. The total proposed increase over last year is 0.9%, but we do not have any district-wide programs currently housed at Manamet Elementary School. We are a Title I targeted assistance school, which means that we're not school-wide. We have to indicate specifically which students are going to get those services throughout the course of the year. That's due to our free and reduced lunch percentage of right around 34%. The supply accounts reflect the per-pupil expenditures, as my colleagues have indicated. The only significant increase from last year is $10,000 for the main office copier, which is 11 years old. presently, and it's in need of replacement. We're very appreciative of the capital outlay funds that we've received over the years. This past summer, one big example of that was our gutters badly needed to be replaced, and downspouts and the trim around the envelope of the building needed to be repaired in many places, and then also painted, and it looks beautiful. They did a very nice job this summer for us with that, and that was just the latest of several of those projects over the years. We try to augment what we receive through the district budget to help meet other needs as well. One example of that has been through the Entergy Corporation's generosity, again, granting us $4,800 this year toward our before and after school theater workshop, work with children. Another example is through the playground fundraising effort over the course of the past 2 years. We're very pleased to be able to raise over $62,000 for the new playground project and have that filled. And even with that money raised, we saved a significant amount of money through the generosity of over 40 volunteers who came to support us that day by putting in the playground, over a dozen of whom were COBRA members from Plymouth here, so we're very appreciative of that and all of their efforts as well. The Manomet Home and School Association continues to be the backbone of enrichment funding for our students, raising anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000 a year for both in-school experiences and out-of-school experience as well. We're working currently to augment the school-based counseling and counseling services by having the Gosnold counselor from Gosnold come in and provide services for students as well, 3 days a week. She's been very busy, but that's not something you won't see represented. That's something you won't see represented in the budget, but that's something that has been a big impact this year, and we're very happy with that as well. So if there's any questions.
Question, Mr. Begley.
Just one, just what you said about the copier, isn't that covered under a district contract? The copiers? I thought the copiers were all under one contract or something.
No, we work with each school to purchase copiers, or at least purchase, but you're correct, they are under a state contract, is what we purchase our copiers under. But they're assigned again to each school's cost center.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay, next.
So good evening, everyone. Michael Spencer, principal of Nathaniel Morton Elementary School, AKA Cost Center 310. Couple things, when you get down near the end of the table, you get reminded about some things from your former colleagues, so I appreciate the order of events here. I do want to, before we go further, I know people have sort of given credit to it, but our budgets at our level here really get a lot of strength and support from the coordinators and all the academic disciplines who have put together per pupil costs for us and really identified details for some of the academic instruction materials. So a big thank you to them from all of us. I would say this budget is definitely pedestrian in putting it together. Not a lot of highlights. It is level service. There is definitely some decreased percentages if you look through the budget due to a decreased projection in enrollment at Nathaniel Morton for next year. We currently have 550 students. 26.5% of them are listed as economically disadvantaged. 13.8% are on active individual education plans. Next year, we have a projection enrollment of 537 students. So there's that difference that you might see in most of the line items of somewhere around 6 to 7% differences in those budgeted pieces. We also are a Title I targeted assistance school currently, and we are one of the 3 elementary schools to serve English learners population. We have about 3% of our total enrollment who fit into that category. We also do have one special education program that is district-wide. It focuses on students who are cognitively performing about 2 grade levels below their same age peers. That program is split between 2 different classrooms. So we have a classroom that serves grade 2, 2nd, and 3rd grade students, and one that serves 4th and 5th grade students. In total, not including those classrooms, we have 27 general education classrooms across the building, a combined professional staff of 47 faculty. We also have an additional 25 full or part-time support staff to help the students throughout the day. As other people have mentioned, we continue to get great support from the capital outlay and the facilities department. It sounds like it was an envelope summer, so we also had painting and trim and gutter work around the envelope of our building. I love that word, Dr. Fran, so that's why I had to use that. We also did have some floor resanding and replacement in some of the classrooms that we have, both through facilities and also just the building itself, using some of the building use money that comes to us. We, as well, have been so generously supported by our PTA, similar to what Mr. Harold mentioned. Our PTA puts out close to $2,000 per grade level to do what we would call in and out of school field trips. So really helps the enrichment for our students, and have helped support us in technology throughout the years with 3 interactive whiteboards being provided last year. I would also say, I think Mrs. Wilson mentioned it, that all the schools received some support from the Lions Club and continued to the last few years to really help and reach out to our most neediest students. So that happened recently around the Thanksgiving time. So that was well appreciated by all of us as well. So as I mentioned, not a whole lot in there to look at in terms of differences one way or the other than what might be represented by a slight decrease in enrollment for next year, but happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? You projected 537, and what is it? What is it this year?
So currently we're at 550.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
South Elementary?
My name is Adam Blaisell. I am cost center 312 South Elementary School. This year we have about 659 students in grades K through 5. As you know, we took back 5th grade this year. We have 31 class sections, and we also have 3 classrooms in our autism spectrum program as well. We are not a Title I school. We have just over 100 staff members total. And as my colleagues have already said, this budget was really created using a per pupil allocation, as the other buildings, like I said, have already reported in conjunction with the curriculum coordinators. During the past year, we have had our backfield completed by A.D. Makepeace, who designed, constructed, and provided all of the materials for that project, which was a very generous donation, and the field looks spectacular. And our custodians are now maintaining that project. We also, through capital, added an overflow parking lot, and if you've been at our school at any event, that parking lot is full. So we've used it to 100% and then some during any event. So we were able to get that through capital. The Lions Club, as people have said already, have provided us a donation. Our PTA supports many additional events, probably in the vicinity of $15,000 to $20,000 per year for our school. We have developed a partnership with High Point, as Manomet has with Gosnold. High Point is addressing some of the social emotional needs of some of our students, and they're funded through insurance providers of the students. And that's how that is. Some of our needs that we're still looking at is really to look at, as Dr. Myers has already said, is providing addressing the behavioral needs of our students, and really looking to offer after-school programming for some of our kids. With that, if you have any questions.
Questions?
Good evening, Scott Williams, principal of the West Elementary School, cost center 314. So this evening, I'm happy to present to you the West budget forecasted for the upcoming year. We are currently at 392 students. We are projected to have 369 for the next academic year. We are a K-5 school with approximately 85 total staff. That includes professional, certificated staff, part-time support staff, paraprofessionals, and specialist teachers. We do house 2 district-wide programs at West, the Life Skills Program and the CARE Program. And then we have 3 sections of grades 1 to 5. With the exception of kindergarten, we have 5 sections of full-day K. As Principal Wilson mentioned earlier, we are hosting 2 kindergarten classrooms this year from the Hedge Elementary School. We have 1 school psychologist, 1 adjustment counselor dedicated to the CARE program, 3 moderate special needs teachers, 1 full-time nurse, and 1 part-time assistant nurse, 1 speech and language teacher, and a part-time speech and language teacher. We also offer OT and PT services, 1 head custodian, 2 night custodians, a school secretary, an assistant principal, 2 security receptionists, and a partridge in a pear tree. We offer Title I services for our students, and we also have English learners at West this year. Approximately 30% of our students represent our free and reduced lunch counts. As many of my colleagues mentioned earlier, we also engage with Gosnold Counseling Services as well as South Bay Counseling to meet the emotional, social behavioral needs of some of our students. And then I have to acknowledge and recognize the funding channels that come to West beyond our budget. We work with generous donations from the Lions Club. Various grants have supported our Nature's Classroom build-out, and then our partners at West, which would be the members of our PTA. They fund our cultural arts assemblies, playground equipment, our Nature's Classroom build-out, field trip expenses and transportation costs, field day T-shirts, technology, iPads, document cameras, Mimeo boards, and then we are hoping to get a new kindergarten playground off the ground in the near future at West. In terms of forecasting the future, one issue I can see at West that would impact capital outlay would be the expansion of the current parking lot. I think the West fields are used extensively every weekend, and it is very crowded at dismissal time, so I can see that being an expenditure in the future at West. We have a minimal variance impacting the budget. It's a basic level service pedestrian budget, so I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions for West? Okay, to the principals of our elementary schools, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
And next, district-wide, Dr. Campbell?
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen.
I know, the words of the day.
Cost Center 319 is district-wide elementary services. This is up 3.1% overall for next year. This budget is primarily made up of certificated staff, particularly our visual performing arts elementary instrumental staff, our district mathematic coaches, literacy para-educators, and the funding for our robotics program, both staff and supplies, and our one elementary health educator that we have. As was pointed out by Dr. Maestas, and this is a level service budget, and if I were to advocate for anything in this particular area, it would be health education.
Any
Happy to take any
questions for Dr.
questions.
Campbell on the presentation of district-wide? Okay, back to Dr. Maestas for middle school.
Yes, moving on to middle school. Tonight, we have our two middle school principals here. PCIS Principal, Cost Center 321, Principal Brian Palladino, and Cost Center 322, Plymouth South Middle School, Principal Steve Morganweck. And before they present, just want to just let the committee know, and also members of the Finance Committee here tonight, know that, as mentioned before, the coordinators do a tremendous job of providing information to the principals. Years ago, we changed to an allocation amount, so we have an allocation amount for every school, every student, so that every student receives the same amount per child across the district. Those numbers are given to each cost center manager to be inserted into the budget. And one last thing, the salaries for every building are managed through Mr. Costin's office. So those numbers are managed through a central office, and those allocations and those dollar amounts are given to each building as necessary. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Palladino.
All right, thank you. Cost Center 321, we're presenting today a level service budget. Again, this budget was developed in collaboration with the district-wide coordinators and directors. This budget was reviewed by school council on November 16th. PCIS enrollment is going up by about 3%. We're going to be at 1,062 next year. Our free and reduced lunch population is a little above 37%. We have a faculty of a little over 104 staff members. We have 4 administrative members and about 20 support staff that consist of paraprofessionals, nurses' aides, main office secretaries, and so on and so forth. So that is our staff. Special education, just like we saw an increase in enrollment, there's also an increase in some of our special ed programs. Our overall special ed enrollment is increasing about 12%. We house 2 district-wide programs at PCIS. One is the CARE program, and that's going to see a 25% increase for next year. And I need to let you know that some of those kids do surface throughout the year. In middle school, we tend to see that. But we also, over the past few years, we've had a lot of kids moving in with IEPs that call for the CARE program. We joke in the school that there's a sign that says open, but I think it's because we do such a wonderful job with our special education programs that people are actually moving into the district for some of these programs, and the CARE program is recognized in some of the other districts around town as being a wonderful program. Our basic skills is seeing a fairly large increase of about 63% coming in for next year. And PCIS is also an EL, which is English Learners School. Currently, we have 15 students at PCIS that are serviced by our EL teacher. And again, that number is 15, but we do see enrollment throughout the year for EL students. It's worth noting that we do have 23 students that have a primary diagnosis of ASD. We do not have an ASD program. Those kids are serviced with some of our MSNs that work with the teachers. So the changes in our budget, you'll see just slight increases for most of our line items, but there are some line items that actually have increased significantly. One of those is our planetarium. We're very fortunate to have our planetarium upgraded, but with that comes some costs. You'll see in our line item that's about a 43.4% increase, and that's for the video streaming with a new dome projection. So there is, and I know Allison Reardon has been instrumental in that, and she could probably talk more specifically about what that is, but there is an increase in that. We did make some adjustments to our general ed contracted services. We were able to purchase some new copiers last year, so with that, the maintenance is not as much yet. So we did move about $2,000 out of that line item and move it into our general ed contracted services for interscholastic sports, just to give our athletic director at the school funds to purchase equipment. Right, what we've been doing is having the PTA purchase all the equipment, the uniforms, and our PTA is wonderful, and they've been very creative on trying to raise money. But the money that's coming into the PTA every year has gotten a little less, and but the need for those funds are fairly large. So we're moving $2,000 in so we can upkeep on equipment, and I think that's important because we want our kids to have safe equipment when they're playing. And our interscholastic sports program services almost 400 students a year, so it's a popular program at PCIS. You'll see again, because of our increase in enrollment with CARE program, we have about a 20% increase in Department 24, which is CARE, and then a 58% increase in Department 28, which is basic skills. And all the other line items are just based on that increased enrollment. As the elementary principals talked about cost-saving things that we're doing at the school, we have a full-time counselor from South Bay who's wonderful. He carries a caseload of about 35 students. He's here Monday to Friday all day long. And those are kids that, if he wasn't here, would have to be serviced by our counselors that already have fairly large caseloads. We've been fortunate enough with Kathy McSweeney and Plymouth North High School to receive the Game Change Patriots Anti-Violence Partnership Grant. So what we're going to be doing is working with Plymouth North. Our students here will be working with Plymouth North High School students that are trained in this program. We're really looking forward to that. We also have had, every year, have a lot of teachers write ARC grants, and it's really to support inclusion within the classroom. So we've had teachers write grants for the stand-up desk with the fidget leg spinners, and that's been very helpful for those students. We've also been fortunate enough to pilot a transition room. Those are for students that are out for acute mental health issues, and it gives them a space to get caught up on work. Because what we're finding is sometimes kids that are out for an extended period of time because of mental health, their transition back to the school, into the classroom, into the setting, has caused, it's almost made it a little worse because the anxiety of coming back and not being caught up and not knowing what's going on. So it's kind of that transition between going back into the classroom and still getting their academic work with a teacher, and so they can transition back. And we've already got students taking advantage of that program as we speak. Again, our PTA supports so many different things we do at PCIS. We have academic awards, our athletic department, field trips, cultural events, building celebrations. Just today we had our honors breakfast for our 8th grade, and also guest speakers, which I think is part of the education of a middle school student. I think when you think of things that we need at this building, I know all the principals will talk about social emotional support. With those 23 ASD students that require specific services to help them, we're relying on our already staff that we have here to support those students. And so that's something that we're looking for. And also, as I mentioned last year, our grounds, we don't have a groundsman, so we rely on our custodial staff to maintain the outside grounds, including those fields that I know we've talked about. So, but any questions, I'd be glad to answer any.
Okay, thank you.
My microphone works, I'm sorry. Good afternoon, or good evening, I should say. I am here presenting Cost Center 322, Plymouth South Middle School's budget for fiscal year 19, excuse me. Currently, Plymouth South Middle School services 723 students in grades 6 through 8. We also house 2 ASD classrooms and a life skills program classroom. 19% of our students receive specialized services for social, emotional, or cognitive disabilities. 18% qualify as economically disadvantaged. The average class size is about 24 students. At Plymouth South Middle School, we have a faculty that includes 64 certificated staff members and 3 administrators. In addition, we have 14 part-time paraprofessionals and 5 full-time paraeducators / other support staff. We are now in our 18th year of operation, and the building continues to be in good working condition. We are currently in the process of repairing the turf on our athletic fields and hope to complete that process by the end of the year. In terms of our community partnerships, to supplement the funds we receive from the town, we work very closely with our community partners, including our PTA. Our very generous parent group has already allocated $15,000 for this academic year. That money will fund field trips, transitional programs, student clubs, recognition ceremonies, and other annual events. In the last 3 years, the PTA has also purchased new uniforms for 7 of our 9 athletic teams, and the remaining teams should receive new uniforms this year. In addition to that partnership, we also have a partnership with the South Bay Community Services, which people have talked about throughout the evening, and that provides very much needed counseling services for our children. On average, the South Bay counselors in our building have regular sessions with 21 students every week in our school. Again, that if we didn't have their partnership, we'd have to find some other way of providing those supports for our students. At this time, we are also renting space to the Pilgrim Area Collaborative and house 2 of their programs. The revenue from that rental has been used to make improvements and repairs to the building. Tonight, I'm pleased to propose or to present a same level of service budget for fiscal year 2019. A couple of items, again, the overall budget is coming in at less than a 1% increase for the total budget. Just a couple of quick things I wanted to point out. On page 84 of the budget that you guys have been working off of, for our science materials line, the description says that we're giving $850 to every student, which sounds really wonderful. It should be $8.50 per student, per pupil, so it didn't change the actual money for the line. It just, the description was slightly wrong, so we apologize about that oversight. A couple other quick things. Again, we're increasing to items like testing materials for our special education and our school psychologist. We have shifted, again, slightly our intramural referee line and our interscholastic bus lines just to reflect our current use of those services. But beyond that, it's again, very same level of funding for this budget as it was in previous years.
Okay, questions here? I have a question, but I think that Senator Dr. Maestas. Both of these budgets have a 31% increase in the calibration of equipment in the nurse's office, the health center, and I noticed it in the other budgets as well. Now, is this an annual requirement? Does this technology has to be upgraded every year?
I would actually let our nurse leader speak to that if she may be able to come up. Is that something you can do, Carolyn?
In these 2 budgets, it's 31% in both budgets.
Yes, that may reflect actually across all schools. When I came on board last year, some schools didn't even have that line item, and others had larger amounts. So it was, I just took the total amount of that service line and I divided it between all schools.
Oh, okay, that's why it's exactly the same in both schools?
It's pretty much the same across all
That's what I
schools, like
thought.
190
So
some odd
then let me
dollars.
ask the question that I asked. Is this an annual requirement for these machines to be recalibrated?
Our audiometers or our hearing machines need to be recalibrated every year.
Every year?
Yes.
So this is a cost that will be consistent each year in all schools, 31% increase?
That was the allotted amount of funding total for all schools, and we just divided it equally between all schools. We also have AEDs that can potentially need to be serviced as well over time. That probably won't happen in the next few years since all of our AEDs have been replaced.
Okay. All right. I personally have a little, not concerned with your work, but concerned with the school with a very small population getting a 31% increase.
Well, it's just that everybody has equipment in all of the
That's a good
schools.
point. Everybody has
So it doesn't
equipment.
really matter if the
Yeah.
school is
Right.
500 students or
Okay, I
200
appreciate that.
students.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I have a request for a brief break, okay? So let's just make it 7 minutes. We're going to be back here in working order at 8:35. Okay, back in session. I'm going to welcome our high schools. Dr. Maestas.
Yes, tonight we are moving on to our secondary high school budget presentations. We're going to begin after break with Cost Center 331 Plymouth North High School and Principal Kathleen McSweeney.
Thank you. Good evening. Dr. Sorensen and school committee members, members of the Finance Committee, Dr. Maestas and Central Office Administration. The budget which has been presented to you for Plymouth North High School was put together with the input of the academic coordinators, our school council, and the department heads of Plymouth North High School. It is based on a projected enrollment of 1,321 students for the 2018-2019 school year. North will maintain a staff of 193, which includes teachers, custodians, paraeducators, secretarial, cafeteria, medical, administrative, and security staffing. Next year, North will enter its 7th year in our no longer brand-new, but still awesome high school. In keeping with our theme of one town, two high schools, we are very happy for South High School as they enter into their new home. Enjoy the ride. It's special for your kids, for your families, and your extended school community. Plymouth North High School houses 4 district programs: Project Growth, the district EL program, the district's CARE program, and the district's Life Skill program. Recently introduced programs to our academic offerings include Biomedical Studies and Zulama. These 2 programs continue to be highly enrolled and will enter their 3rd and 4th year respectively next year. The 2018-2019 budget reflects a level service budget. No additional staffing or programs are contained within. As you have heard from my colleagues, demands on our staff in the area of social emotional needs continue to escalate, and specific to North, our EL population grows each year and has grown significantly over the last 3 years. The last request that we had, if there's anyone that knows how we could get another parking lot at North, that would be greatly welcomed as well. Ms. Sylvia will share the vocational portion of North's budget in just a few minutes, and at this time, I would entertain any questions you may have about the budget that was presented.
Any questions regarding the North High School budget? Okay, moving on.
Test, test. Excellent, thank you. Good evening, Finance Committee. Obviously, we are here this evening to present Plymouth South High School's Cost Center 332. And my name is Jim Hanna. I'm the principal at the high school. We have prepared a level service budget with a total increase of 0.3%. This increase or variance is specifically a result of supplies and materials, contracted services, and of course salaries. This is based on a population projected growth of 1,095 students. So therefore, our supplies and materials are based on per pupil allocations. Our enrollment has increased since the doors of the new Plymouth South High School has opened by 80 students since June of 2017. So right now we are at 1,083 students. We have 132 full-time certificated faculty, an additional 20 full-time paraprofessionals. Obviously, with our new beautiful building, such a spectacular space, we are not coming to this table requesting anything at this time. Spare set of keys to the new building. Because that's, right now, we're in a beautiful place, and obviously the learning process is for all of our students is taken off, and it's very vibrant. On the horizon, I would anticipate more enrollment increases at Plymouth South High School. So eventually, we'll probably having conversations about additional need for some of our programming, such as our ASD, foreign language, and of course, vocational education in terms of staffing. But at this point in time, it's very specific in this detailed sheets. You'll see the increases were based upon our supplies and materials, salaries, and of course, contracted services. So with that being said, any questions regarding Cost Center 332? I'll be happy to answer those. And
Nope.
turn it over to Cindy. Good? All right.
Thank you tonight for my first budget presentation, so feel free to never ask a question. The first cost center I'm going to speak about is 334 at Plymouth North, and it's really just shuffling around some line items that needed to be reallocated. We moved $250 from 3 different programs and $500 from facilities and moved it over to wood design technology, which is not a vocational program, but it's an academic technical elective that needed more support. So it was organically being done anyway, so we just moved that cost center. It is less than a 1% increase at Plymouth North, and we service 361 vocational technical students at Plymouth North in 4 technical programs. Does anybody have any questions regarding Plymouth North?
Okay, now south.
South, okay. It is a beautiful building, and it's a 0.59%, little over a 0.5% increase for 561 total vocational technical students at Plymouth South. And with a new school comes new contracted services for new machines that are in the different vocational areas. We have an increased service contract for an additional plotter. We also have an aging fleet of vans that we have through the vocational educational program that's also used in different areas that need to be serviced. So there is also an increase in the aging van fleet, along with also an increase in service, a service contract for the 3D printer in CAD. And that mirrors the same service contract that it currently exists at Plymouth North.
Any questions?
Yeah, I was just wondering, could you give me the number of the VOTEC students?
At Plymouth South?
Yes.
561.
Oh, that's, I did have it right.
And your, by the way, since we followed that up, Jim, in your 1095, it includes the 561.
Correct.
Dr. Maestas.
Just a question for Director Sylvia. How many vans do we have currently for vocational work?
We have 5 vans that we're using on a regular basis. We have a 10-passenger van that's pretty much on its last leg. It's only staying around in this neck of the woods. And we have another van down at Plymouth North High School that is also aging.
And those are used to get students on job sites for contract work that we engage in throughout the vocational program?
Also serves for athletic contests at times, different field trips, small needs.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're moving on to our cost centers. Actually, we're moving on to regional vocational education, which is Mr. Costin, Cost Center 336.
Cost Center 336 covers the obligations for the school district to pay for students who attend out-of-district vocational schools. As you all know, we are required to provide transportation and tuition to students to attend programs, vocational programs, approved vocational programs that are not offered in our school district. Essentially, we have 2 schools that we've traditionally transported and paid tuition for, which has been Bristol and Norfolk, and those have really been for the agricultural programs. We're seeing a lot of students going into the, I'll say, veterinary technician, animal husbandry type programs. So currently, this year, we have We have 4 grade 11 students, 1 grade 10, and we have 3 grade 9, and next year we're projecting for 8 students to go to. This is something that a little bit of a roll of the dice, because we don't know how many students will apply and how many will get in. We had one waitlisted this year that did not get in, but it seems to be a popular program, and we will know really in the spring, because there are deadlines that they have to go through the superintendent's office if they are to apply for this program.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Costin. Dr. Maestas.
Yes, we're moving on to the district-wide coordinators. We are going to begin this group with our coordinator, Mike Capel. He is the director of Program 347, Visual and Performing Arts. Mike? Actually, you know what, why don't we just have everyone else come up? We'll have technology, and we'll have district-wide coordinator services, so we'll do the whole coordinator group as a whole. Thank you.
Good evening. Again, my name is Mike Capel. I'm the coordinator for visual performing arts for the Plymouth Public Schools. And I'm presenting Cost Center 347, which is district-wide visual and performing arts. It is a level service budget. You'll notice a small increase, 3.8%. The majority of that is due to the reallocation of lines from different schools into the district-wide budget, mainly around professional memberships for our teachers, which is needed to enter students into different competitions and festivals, and also some transportation reimbursement, which has to do with the competitions and festivals as well. And then the only other thing I will highlight that is an increase is the maintenance of our elementary instrumental loaner program. We currently have 126 loaner instruments. This is for our elementary population, 4th and 5th grade, and students, we provide the education for them. However, many families on their own have to rent instruments. We provide a library for those students who cannot afford to do so. We have increased that greatly, and the maintenance and repair of those instruments is increasing. Not only the number, but the cost is increasing, and therefore the request for the increase in the repair budget on that line. Those are the notable exceptions for the Cost Center 347, and I'd be happy to answer any and all questions you might have.
I just have one question. Did you say, let me understand you correctly, that 243% increase in the dues and memberships, that's not new budget money, that's come from other places into your budget?
Correct, absolutely. It's coming from the different secondary buildings. Instead of working with Mr. Costin's office, we're moving that into a centralized location. It's not an increase in the budget.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, moving on. Who's next?
We'll start with, we'll go with technology. Julia Colby, that's Cost Center 352.
Okay, good evening, Julia Corby, Cost Center 352. What you'll see is my level service budget. It goes up about 1%, and that is because of an increase in contractual services. You will notice if you look at my different line items that some go up 50%, some go down 70%, and that's what Mr. Costin referred to. The accounts were realigned so that the proper accounts and function codes were used. So about, you'll notice about 75% of my accounts were realigned in order to be put in the proper accounts. And that's it. Any questions?
Any questions? None? Thank you.
Next, we're going to Alan McLean. He's our systems engineer for technology. He's Cost Center 362.
Good evening, Cost Center 362, Technology Center. Overall, I'm presenting to you a level service budget with a 2.6% increase, and that is due to the cost of contracted services increasing. Specifically, it would be our district-wide wireless access point service contract and our IT management and monitoring software district-wide contract. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Moving on.
Moving on, we're going to our section 6 of our presentation. Oh, excuse me. This is district-wide coordinator services, Dr. White, cost center 354. I might add that cost center 354 is the coordinator's office and the budget that supports that office. So we'll turn it over to Lisa.
Good evening. Lisa White, ELA and Library Coordinator, representing Cost Center 354. Our cost center includes the salaries for 4 academic coordinators and 2 administrative assistants. It also includes travel and dues and office supplies and copy machine. The one difference you'll see, the amounts are the same, but there was a transfer from one line to another. We are finding that we don't need to do as much outside copying anymore, where we send out to a place where the machines we have now, we can do more of that in-house. So we applied that money to our contract for our own copy machine. That's it.
Any questions? Thank you. Thank you. Now we're moving on to special education and pupil services. I'd like to have those directors and coordinators come up, please. We will start with cost center 301, the Plymouth Early Childhood Center. And our director is Mary Mello. She is here tonight to begin this section of our budget presentation. And this is Mary's last budget presentation for the Plymouth schools. As you remember, she is retiring at the end of this school, actually, in a few days, so in January.
January, right after.
Well, to me, that's a few days.
January, right after the audit.
Right after the CPR, she'll retire. Yeah. So we'll turn over to Mary and welcome tonight.
Okay, good evening. I'm Cost Center 301. The Plymouth Early Childhood Center is all settled in our new home in the Apollo wing of PCIS. It's so wonderful having everybody together on a 1-floor building. We have so much more room and light. We're really enjoying it. And then with the help of our PTA and so many generous community partners, we were able to move the playground from Mount Pleasant over to PCIS. The original estimate was $60,000. We ended up doing it for $17,000. And that's thanks to the many generous people in the community. So I have a level-funded budget, just like, all of my colleagues. I think the one point that is most notable in my budget is it's report number 333. It's professional certificated salaries. As Dr. Maestas said, the state and the federal government have been decreasing the grants. And I write 3 grants every year to support this program. 2 of the 3 grants fund salaries only. And the largest grant, which is close to $100,000, is gradually is being decreased by 33% per year. And next year is the last year that grant is going to be available. So that it's almost 13% increase in salaries is due to that major grant being decreased again this year. So that has been a challenge for Mr. Costin because it's been a surprise every April and every August. When I get the email, I have to get a hold of him and we have to do some, fast accounting to try and cover those shortages. But now we know where we stand and we can just plan for it. Do you have any questions regarding my budget?
Could you tell me how many students are in your program?
At the present, we're at about 176 and enrolling, 2 to 3 students, almost every week. By the end of the year, we end up having around 225.
And when you were back in the old building, how many did you have?
At that point, let's see, 30, 16, 3 times 6. We only had about 150 or so.
Okay, thank you. We're going to miss you.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to miss Plymouth a lot. It's been a wonderful experience.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Avatabi. I'm the director of the Alternative High School Cost Center 335. I will be presenting a level service budget. Currently, right now, we have about 50 students, give or take, and I project that moving forward to remain somewhere along that 50 to 55 students. We have 15 non-certificated and certificated positions right now that offer about 15 classes for our students involved in our program. There is a slight increase in the contracted services with our contract with GATRA, which is our evening transportation to some North Plymouth students, which is a slight increase there. Everything else remains relatively unchanged. Any questions?
Just a comment.
Dr.
The
Mansis?
staff that you have are limited staff, they're part-time.
Yeah, so most of our staff, the majority of our staff is on adjunct contracts, so we primarily hire day school teachers who work in the evening with us, which, as I said a few weeks ago when I presented in front of the school committee, is an ongoing challenge for us to make sure that we're offering quality service to our students consistently, but it is something we work hard to do regardless. So we do have one full-time guidance counselor, myself, and then the rest would remain the adjunct staff within our program.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
Good evening. My name's Sean Halpin, Director of Student Support Services, and this is Cost Center 348. Student Support Services comprises the general education support services district-wide, including school counseling services, English learner education, McKinney-Vento, and homeless and foster care transportation, the district-wide supervisor of attendance, general education tutoring services, homeschooling, and high school MCAS math tutoring. The budget right now is about $1.2 million. It's a 0.2% increase. Technically, it's not a level service budget in the sense that we do have one increase in an EL staff member. The district-wide student support service budget does cover our ESL teachers because technically we could have them be working in any buildings across the district, even though we do anchor them at certain schools that provide those services. So for the FY19 budget, we have 6 certified ESL instructors, the attendance supervisor, myself, a .5 secretary, as well as the MCAS math tutor for the high school. The one thing that I'd explain a little bit, and I'll try to be relatively brief, is that there has been a change in the law around foster care transportation. I've explained this during other presentations. Really what it's doing is it's putting more of a burden on the districts to provide much needed transportation for educational stability for our foster care students. You'll notice that we broke out one of the lines. It was just McKinney-Vento homeless transportation. It's now two lines. The amount has not increased. We've just split it up because we have to account for students that we are providing foster care transportation for. And we can expect that probably to increase the budget over time based on the fact that for foster care students, we can't cost share those students with other towns the way we can with homeless students. The burden is on the district of origin to provide that transportation. And recently the state has kind of clarified that for us. So that's just something to keep an eye on moving forward. Finally, I guess I'd say that the other presenters tonight have mentioned the fact that we have community services providing mental health services for our students in different schools. We've got South Bay, Gosnold, and High Point coming into 11 out of the 13 schools in our district. We're grateful for that. It doesn't impact our budget. It provides a level of service that is a little different than what our school counselors and school psychologists provide. And I think it just is sort of a sign of the times for us. We're grateful for that. We're looking at continuing to come up with creative ways to provide those services for our kids. That's just by way of summary. So you've looked at the budget. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Dr.
I
Mayestas?
just have a question, Dr. Halpin, on your numbers for English language learners and for homeless students. What are the counts currently for ELL and for homeless?
Yeah, the current count for homeless students, last year we had 100 in district and 60 out of district or cost share, so it was a total of 160 kids, but 100 of the students were in Plymouth. And we've averaged close to 100 homeless students for the past 3 years, okay? within district, and the out-of-district has been about that, about 60 or 50, 60 or 70 in that range. Right now, we have 60 in-district students already this year, as of December. That number will go up. And we are keeping track now of foster care students as well. So we have 43 homeless students, McKinney-Vento students, and 17 currently foster care students. The EL numbers, recently I looked at that, and we're I think at 92 active EL students receiving services in the schools. It doesn't include former EL students. You could double that at least, probably. And when you look at the EL numbers over time, historically, I would say we've doubled our EL numbers in about 7 or 8 years. It's been a slow, steady climb. Couple that with the state's recommendation a number of years ago when we went through the CPR audit to change our model of services, we've been able to add instructors to help with that, but we're seeing an acute increase in the needs of our EL students as well, students who may be coming to us with a limited or interrupted education. So that does put a challenge on us as well.
And Dr. Sorensen, the only reason why I want Dr. Halpin to identify this is, these are mandates that we have to try to find ways to manage. And, we do get some level of support for homeless education and McKinney-Vento and transportation in some aspect, but it still doesn't cover the cost of these transitional services that we do need to provide. And that's another area that we find a challenge. And as we add more kids, the budget is in flux in a sense because students come and go, and we have to adjust. The ELL population or EL population in Plymouth has grown significantly, and I see that number is going to continue to grow. And I do believe that where we did have schools that were focused, targeted EL schools or ELL schools, I see that number down the road may cause us to look at offering more and more services to more schools across the district. So that's something that we have to consider moving forward.
How many do we have now?
92 students district-wide, EL students, yes.
And those are students that receive services, not to say that students that are former English language education students that have reached a level of language proficiency that they don't have direct services attached anymore.
These are 92 with service?
Yes, with services.
Thank you.
Just one quick thing, this budget also does provide financing for the students in Plymouth who are going to recovery high schools as well, and I left that out, and that can tend to fluctuate from year to year. We budget for about 2 to 3 students. Right now, we have 1 full-time student there. 2 of them have actually left to find more acute care.
Dr. Halpern, I was going to ask a similar question to Dr. Maesta's question. And it deserves a few seconds because it's a 243% increase on the foster care transportation versus McKinney-Vento transportation. So maybe just take a couple of seconds and just describe the differences here. Like, what's a foster care transportation as opposed to McKinney-Vento transportation?
Also, the numbers themselves, like I said, it didn't change the overall amount of money we're going to predict to spend on transportation, but the law requires that we transport students who are homeless to and from their school of origin. The law now also requires that we do the same thing for students in foster care. And the definition of both homelessness and foster care is a wide umbrella. We think of homelessness sometimes in a traditional sense, but there are students who have unaccompanied youth. There are students who are doubling up with other families because of economic circumstances, loss of housing. For our foster care students, actually it's any student who's in any level of foster care at all, which really makes it harder for us, to be quite honest with you. Any student who is in DCF care, the STAR programs in town, that's something that we transport those students to and from school. If a student from Plymouth gets moved to a foster placement outside of our town, we're the school of origin. They have about a 60-minute rule that we look at for that, but we still have to provide transportation for those students if it's deemed in their best interest to do that. And really, if you boil it down, DCF has most of the decision-making power in that process the way the law is written. I hope that helps.
It does.
Clarify.
Do kids age out of that? Does 18 change it?
That's a good question. For homelessness, they don't age out. They can, if they're in school, they're still considered homeless. And for foster care, I believe if they're in school, they are considered homeless. The one difference with foster care is if students are in a permanent foster placement and they move from an elementary to middle or a middle to a high school, we do not have to continue them on to the next school of origin. In homelessness situations, we do. Why
okay.
is the law different? I'm not sure, but it is.
Okay. Any other questions here?
You mentioned that 11 of our schools take the counseling. We have counseling, external counseling services. Why don't we have them at all?
The two high schools,
so
we
we
made
have-
decisions around that based on pulling them out of class, and just the ease of services isn't quite there at the high school level.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, special ed?
I'm Stacy Rogers. I'm the Director of Special Education, Cost Center 353. So it seems as though special education typically gets the most attention. I will preface this by saying that it is, however, probably the most unpredictable budget within the cost centers. You'll see that we do have some increases. However, this is a level service budget, and it's mostly reflective of some loss in grant funds that the district received previously. So we were notified in November that we are losing $60,000 in professional development, and the 240, which is the IDEA grant, has remained level funded, which does not allow us to continue our maintenance of effort for students with disabilities. So mostly, you'll see an increase in our contracted service. This has to do with the increase in vendor costs, increase in out-of-district tuitions, and other increases with transportation and other contracted services. I did say, however, there was no additional staffing. However, there are staffing increases in the sense of we've had to move some staff members out of grant funds into the LEA due to the lack of grant funding, and also some increases in the amount of time. So we've had staff members who may have been a 0.2 or a 0.4, and they've been moved to a 0.6 or a 0.8 in order to continue servicing different populations of students.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Oh, well, I do have a question. How many students in special education that is on IEPs?
Just under 1,500, approximately.
Under 1,500?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
We're about 19.5% district-wide.
Okay.
All right, moving on, we are moving to central office services. We're going to start with district-wide undistributed. That's Mr. Costin.
Thank you. District-wide undistributed covers a number of different areas, and there is a sizable number in there, which I'll explain. We roll into this cost center things like the insurance that we carry for our students, catastrophic insurance for sports, student accident insurance. We also carry annuity matches, sick incentives, separation costs. If an employee leaves and there are some costs that we owe them, we have to report those in a different function code, again, the DESE. One thing I'd like to highlight, and we greatly appreciate, we've spoken many times here about, is the audit funds. Next year, we're due to audit the high schools again. I don't know if you've probably seen recent articles from schools in Boston and one on Cape Cod. They've had some issues with student activities, and we greatly appreciate us being able to audit and keep all of our practices up to date and current. The biggest item, though, obviously in here is lane column changes, which we carry for staff. We can't assign it to each individual school. We don't know where the lane column changes when we're able to budget for steps, but when a employee advances in a degree, they go from one lane to another, so we have a contingency in there for that. But also, we have put a projected amount of funds in here so that we're able to negotiate a COLA for all of our contracts. As you know, we do not have, we'll be negotiating contracts. We don't have a contract for FY19. So that's really the reason for the increase in this account. Once we settle the contract, it will be assigned and distributed to all the schools and all those thousands of orgs that we have to plug it into.
Questions to Mr. Costin? Okay.
Moving on, we have our Cost Center 351, district-wide accountability and measurement. It's Karen Burnett. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you. Good evening. Karen Vanette, I'm the Director of Accountability and Measurement. I'll be presenting Cost Center 351. My cost center, my budget primarily consists of contracted services for our student staff assessment databases, all of which have pretty much stayed the same with one addition of a new software program named Panorama. This is going to be utilized to report out our social emotional data that we're collecting this year, starting with the 8th graders. This particular software, though, can be used for so much more. It's a really nice data dashboard view, so it's going to take in not only into account social emotional data from the surveys, from the Preventure surveys we do, it's going to combine that with attendance, conduct, grades, and it all shows it in a really nice visual in one spot, so guidance counselors can look at it very quickly and see a student's declining in attendance or declining in conduct or grades on a regular basis in real time. So we'll be able to help our students along the way throughout the year and see when things happen for them. So with that said, I was able to decrease some of my supply money to offset the cost of that particular software program. So my cost center is a 1.5% increase, which amounts to about $6,000.
Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The next cost center is Cost Center 355. That's district-wide central administration services, and I will review that this evening. This budget is up by 0.1%. This is the cost center where we maintain memberships and association memberships for school committee. We also maintain memberships for our administrators across the district for different curriculum associations that we belong to. A few years ago, we landed up moving all of the memberships into this line item because we were finding that if we bought them in groups, we were actually saving money. So we actually brought them all into one cost center. So you can see that this cost center and the line items fluctuate based on what happens on a yearly basis with conferences and things of that nature that we would attend. If some people don't go, the budget would actually be a little less. If more attend the conference, it would go up a little bit. But you can see there are some fluctuations within this cost center, but it really is based on subscription and how we actually manage those throughout the district. Once again, this budget is up by 0.1%. Very minimal changes. Again, it's to manage all of the operations of the school committee and the coordinator, director, principals, and their memberships throughout the district that we manage, and a lot of those are tied to contracts. So with that said, if there's any
questions, Dr. Maestas, on this one?
Okay. We're moving on now to district-wide curriculum and professional development. This is Dr. Campbell's presentation, 356.
Thank you, Dr. Maestas. Cost Center 356 is our district curriculum and professional development budget. It is up 0.3% overall. Essentially, this budget reflects the contractual obligations that we have to our certificated, non-certificated, and support staff regarding course reimbursement, conference expenses, and as well as professional development needs within our district. So any funds associated in this budget towards our full-day professional development days, our early release days, any other workshops that we need to send our educators to for professional reasons. We have 827 certificated staff, 100 full-time para-educators that are supported through this, as well as other support staff. There's a small budget for some office supplies as well. As Dr. Maestas mentioned, Title IIA is our federal grant that we receive. We rely on that heavily to offset the costs associated with these needs, and it's about $216,000. And the federal government has been speaking about potentially eliminating that in the future. So we're in a wait-and-see pattern with that. As Dr. Rogers just said, her professional development grant went away, and we found out this fall for $60,000. So if that was cut, we'd have a significant shortfall there. But at this point, we're going with what we know. So this budget is essentially a level service.
Any questions for Dr. Campbell?
Next, we are moving on to district-wide business services and operation. That's Mr. Costin.
No, I thought we were doing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jeez.
Human resources.
I tend to do this from time to time. I know the
That's not bad.
coordinators and directors are used to me doing this at our meetings twice a month, so. Program 357, district-wide human resources, Mrs. Fry.
Yes, as you've heard from everyone else this evening, it's a level service budget. You'll see a few minor increases. There's a 3% increase, and it's really due to legal fees that we anticipate. In collaboration with the EAPC, we've held off till after the new year to begin negotiations because of the PEC process and working with the town. So we agreed upon that earlier in the year, but we know that will start very soon with our major 4 contracts and working through that process with our attorneys. The other area that we did increase a minimal amount was we know we have a director and a principal retiring this year, so our administrative mentoring program, we have some trainings we've added into that process to support administrators and principals specifically that come in new to such a large district. And some of our fees and items for job fairs have gone up, just like contracted services go up and we're also trying to recruit a little bit more and increase presence, add a LinkedIn option for the Plymouth Public Schools and things of that nature. So they're minimal increases, but the legal is the biggest amount of my budget.
Any questions for Ms. Fry?
Okay. Now we'll go to 358, Mr. Costin.
Okay, 358, business office, business services is up 3%. The majority of the increase is based on transportation, utilities. This pays for our natural gas, our propane, also our traffic control officers that we use at a number of our schools, the crossing guards, et cetera. And the school resource officers, the district's responsibility to pay part of their salaries. I should mention that we did not build anything in here for any additional traffic control officers at North High School, should that construction require it next year in FY19.
Nothing's built in at all for that?
No, not for an additional body, no. Again, this budget was built before there was a vote to proceed on that, and town meeting hasn't voted that, so.
I think the other thing, too, with Oberry Street is the timeline on construction, and it'll take well over a year to actually construct that, so.
I understand that, but what about during that period of time that the construction's going on? There must
Yep.
be somebody needed.
Yeah, we do have 2 crossing guards, one on Oberry Street and one on Nook Road that we do employ now. If we do see the need, we'll consult with the principal to see what we need to do to accommodate that. But Ms. Burgess, if we do need to ensure there's a level of security, safety crossing the street and actually with traffic, we'll assess it during phases of the construction and beyond. So we will bring that information to the table and we'll let the school committee know.
And as we discussed here 2 meetings ago, that when the sidewalks by West School get finished, there'll be another need for a crossing guard.
That's correct. All right, moving on to Cost Center 363, district-wide solar renewable energy. Mr. Costin.
This cost center essentially pays for our solar fields, the amount that we're paying to our solar producers. There's a 4.7% increase, really due to South High School coming online and a little bit change in the solar renewable credits, the projected value of the credits. As you know, we work with a consultant to help us do these projections. These are very complicated, and we manage all of the fields across the town. We have 5 solar projects that we have going on, 2 that we manage and assign to the town. saving well over, it's almost about $200,000 in the last year. So that's something we'll continue to do. However, for FY19, we did not include any, this does include our new project, but it does not include any pilot that's yet to be negotiated by the town. As you know, the way the RFP was set up to do South High School, which is on a very accelerated timeline, we have to get that done by the first of the year, contract signed. The pilot will be a supplemental part of that, what we'll be calling an adder. It'll be added on to the cost of the PPA. It's really a pass-through cost, but yet that has yet to be negotiated.
Okay. Questions? Okay, moving on.
And moving on to Cost Center 371, charter schools, and this is for Rising Tide. Mr. Costa.
Charter schools, as you know, we are obligated to provide transportation to any charter school that resides within the town of Plymouth. We have 9 buses this year, and we'll continue with 9 buses next year to Rising Tide. It's a 2.3% increase, which essentially is the cost increase of year 2 of our contract with First Student. This does not include any additional transportation costs for any the MAP Academy, which will be coming online next year. I think it's our intention to use our existing fleet and work with them to go within our existing timeframes. And that's really the way the spirit of the law is written with the DESE, is that the charter schools should be working with the community to minimize any costs or interruptions to regular transportation for the students.
Any questions? I have one, I don't suppose you can answer it here at the table, but we just heard this evening that the alternative high school program uses GATRA in the evening, and they have to pay a fee to GATRA. I'm wondering if there'd be any cost savings if we could provide that transportation through our bus contract.
What we do is, and that's an excellent question, we provide the transportation to the program. We have when we're dropping off students at the high school level, we're also picking up students. And then we do it for South, and we do it for North. And then we have a shuttle bus that runs from South High School up to PCIS, and it picks up those students because all the buses from North High School go to PCIS, and it brings them to the North Campus. We don't have a vehicle to
Late
bring
in the
them
day.
home, and that would be much more costly than GATRA.
Okay, that's what I asked you.
To
Okay.
have a
And
bus.
another question about Rising Tide. If they have a field trip, do we provide those buses?
I'm sorry, a field trip?
If Rising Tide has a field trip?
No, we're obligated to provide to and from
school.
only.
Thank you. Dr. Maestas, back to you.
Yes, we are done with presentations for this evening, and I will once again extend to the Finance Committee the opportunity to meet with you and the rest of the Education Subcommittee to ask other questions of the school department regarding the budget presentation tonight, or any thoughts you might have moving forward. So we will arrange a meeting, and we can do that in the evening. Typically, Mr. Helm or someone who is chairing the committee will actually arrange that meeting, and we will work with them to actually move that, have a meeting scheduled in the future. It'll be, I would say, in the next 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks, and we can arrange that. With that said, I just want to remind everyone that December 18, 2017 is a public hearing. That'll be the first item on the agenda at 7 p.m. here at PCIS. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Chairman Sorensen.
Any other business, either from the Finance Committee or the School Committee, to be brought to the table this evening? Okay, seeing no other business, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.